The Drum Candy podcast is brought to you by Drum Factory Direct.
What's up, everyone? Welcome into episode 8 of season 2 of the Drum Candy podcast. This is your host, Mike Dawson. I'm coming to you from Drum Factory Direct in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This week's guest is my good friend Damon Grant. Damon is a world-class percussionist who's performed with Charlie Hunter, Morgan James, Horacio Negro Hernandez, Stefon Harris, tons of other great artists. He has his own band called the Damon Grant Project. He released his own record that is titled Prevailing Melodies. And he is also the host of the podcast Discussions in Percussion. So this episode is special. I wanted to pick Damon's brain about some techniques that drum set players should know on how to play the different percussion instruments, some tips on how to play with a percussionist, a gear rundown of how he works with hybrid setups. This is a pretty deep one. If you got a wish list for some Christmas gifts or whatever, birthday presents, there's a lot of toys and cool things to check out in this episode. So let's get right to it. Dude, I almost want to just get right into the nerdy stuff, but I feel like we have to talk about PASIC a little bit.
Yeah, it's fine. Let's do that.
Okay.
Let's talk about PASIC.
I don't know about you. It's good to see you there.
It's good to see you too. I just saw you, but it's good to see you again.
Right. I don't know about you, but I felt like it was surprisingly badass for a PASIC at the end of a pandemic. Attendance was great. Clinicians were great.
Yes. The only thing that I was hoping for was to see more gear, because I'm kind of a gear nerd. Mm-hmm. But I completely understand that there's like a big shipping kerfuffle. Is that like an SAT word? Kerfuffle. There's a big shipping kerfuffle going on, and there's also a cardboard shortage. So the companies that are already strapped with shipping gear out to like their artists or music stores or whatever, and then to have to turn right around to their shipping departments and be like, oh yeah, can you send a bunch of stuff to Indianapolis, and then we're going to send whatever we don't sell right back. I'm sure the people in the shipping department were like, are you kidding me?
I didn't know there was a cardboard shortage, and I work at a warehouse. I should have known that.
Yeah, there's also a microchip shortage because I was looking for a new camera, and they're like, yeah, that's the big holdup.
Yeah, pretty wild. But the exhibit hall hopefully next year will be much more packed and filled out, but it was still great to see the few companies that were there to represent. Let's talk about clinicians. What did you get to see? What were you impressed by? What did you learn from this year's PASIC?
Well, the first thing I saw was the vibraphone concert, the 100th anniversary, and I was really excited that they went through like the I guess if you want to call them the big three pioneers of the vibraphone: Lionel Hampton, Bobby Hutchinson, Milt Jackson, but also included a very overlooked vibraphone player that's not just a vibraphonist, but he's also like a soul R&B musician, and that's Roy Ayers. I think he gets overlooked a lot. People dive right in to Gary Burton, and then people like him with like Terry Gibbs and Emil Richards. They go down that list, and it's like, well, there's another guy over here. Oh, and then you got the Latin side of things with like Cal Jader, Dave Samuels, Tito Puente. He always gets overlooked. So
they play vibes. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
I have never heard or seen Tito Puente play vibes.
Oh, well then as soon as we end this, I'm going to send you some stuff. Yeah. So, that's what I'm saying. Like 100 years of the vibraphone, it's an instrument that covers wide genres and styles, and they were trying to fit in as much as they could. And I think they did an awesome job. That the featured vibraphonists were Stefon Harris, Warren Wolf, Joe Locke, and Jason Marcellus. The rhythm section was crushing. Obed Calvera on drums, Ben Williams on bass. I can't remember who's playing piano. Please forgive me. We had dinner that night. I'm sorry. But then the next day, I've been doing like the singer-songwriter setup, not the one you're looking at. And sometimes I have to be really quiet, and I've been working on my brush work. And I went to go see Clayton Cameron just to be reminded of what I need to practice. And he did not disappoint. Yeah. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, yeah. The sound he gets out of his sweeps alone. Ironically, I didn't know he was going to be there. In the past month, I've been shedding through his book, Brushworks. just getting, because I haven't literally having to play anything with brushes. It's just been train beats for like 12 years. So it took a while just to get the sweeps back, and then like that book is deep. But then to hear him and see him do that on stage and just get all these rhythms out of just pressure, like that's an art form.
I like the fact that in his clinics, I haven't seen him do one in a while, but I remember that he always makes a point of this, is he talks about the relationship with tap dancing. That was a huge thing in the, I want to say, in the West Coast. The hoofers, the tap dancers, and the brush players. Like, even if you go back to the movie Ray with Jamie Foxx, there's a scene where like Ray first gets to Seattle, and there's a guy like who puts down sand on the stage and starts like doing some tap dancing and soft shoe, and there's a guy behind him just sweeping on the brushes, and I'm like, there it is. That's yes. So
you're not. Are you doing sweeps and stuff in your songwriter gigs?
Sometimes if it's really like intimate and you don't want the kick snare sound of the cajon, or I have a pancake snare and a pedal on the cajon, so like that's even more drummy. So sometimes I'll mix sweeps in, cool. That's kind of what I use it for. Or if they have like a really soft, super ballady song, I'll just give some ambiance, and that figure 8 pressure thing that he was doing, where to apply the pressure on the figure 8 to make it feel like moving eighth notes. That was like, I was like, man, I'm going to be working on that for years.
Yeah, for real. What are your brushes of choice?
I use the Vic Firth Legacy brushes, which are the steel bristles, and then there's like a little, like 2 inches of rubber, so I can hit a rim or a cymbal, and then the rest of it is actually a wood shaft, so it feels like a drumstick, and if I need to, I can flip it over and do like a cross stick.
Cool. Yeah. Legacy brushes. There you go. Are they in stock? I mean, I know there's been a brush shortage around the world.
I mean, I've had the same pair for over a decade, so mine are in stock.
You're the ideal artist.
Well, I mean, like, how hard are you really going after it on brushes?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly blown some up on country gigs, but
fair enough. Fair enough.
We use just the nylon ones where they just start flying apart. Yeah. I wouldn't use a legacy brush for that. What else? Any other presentations, clinics you saw that you were like, I gotta get back into that?
Marcus Gilmore was awesome because, I mean, he might have talked for 5 minutes out of the entire clinic. And the first part was just him playing. And you got enough information just watching him play that you didn't really need him to talk, just him experiment. And I got to ask him afterwards, it's like, are you leading your independence with the melodies, or are you leading with an ostinato and then trying to just kind of expand the vocabulary from that ostinato? And at first he was like, it's the melodies. But then he's like, you know what? It's both. It's both. It depends on the situation of what's going on musically. But you could tell that he was thinking and searching for stuff. That was really cool.
If anyone wasn't at PASIC, Marcus Gilmore had one of the most unique setups. 2 bass drums tuned wide open and to different pitches. I don't know.
Which he got 3 notes out of.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then he had like a towel that he would press against the head for different sound. I mean, it was the bass drum sounds alone. It was so melodic, so cinematic just between that. And then he had 2 hi-hats. He had a main hi-hat, and they had a secondary hi-hat by his left heel that had like cup chimes. So he was able to make these like dual hi-hat parts that were just insane. His kit sounded beautiful. He had 1 cymbal, just one ride.
Yeah, that's it. That's all you need. But the ride, it was defined enough that he could get articulation out of it, but washy enough that if he crashed on it, it would kind of like when you think about somebody diving into a pool, that kind of explosion.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah, it was certainly one of my favorite PASICs ever was Jack DeJohnette, and he just performed for 45 minutes of the same thing. Like, you could tell he just hit a drum and then hit another drum, and then it became music all of a sudden. I felt like Marcus was like almost even more compositional. It was just so beautiful. So I agree. Yeah. That was like, okay. Back to the shed.
It's like, how can I be more melodic? I'm doing this all wrong. Yeah. But then you see like the opposite. I mean, not to say that Thomas Lang isn't melodic, but he's, definitely full of fireworks. And you're like, well, maybe I don't need all those melodies. Maybe I just need to work on playing fast and my rudiments and stuff.
Yeah, I thought Marcus was deceptively like advanced because the ostinatos were so melodic. You're like, you kind of overlook like, oh, there's like 4 rhythms going on with his feet here, and he's freely playing over top of it. It was really cool.
Yeah, definitely. Rich Redmond, always funny, full of energy. I loved his. I'm talking all drum set players. I know percussion. Marcos Lopez. He had a great clinic on the evolution of timbales, the vocabulary that can be developed. Very basic, with very basic rhythms, and then how to make those into melodies as well. How to expand your timbales into what I guess he's using now as a timbal kit, which includes like a hi-hat, a floor tom, a kick drum, a snare drum, and then also how you can apply this if you're a drum set player to your setup that way. And then who else? Thomas Lang and Pete Lockett were great. They didn't even rehearse. They just kind of talked through some stuff, and then they went out there and like, let's do it. Who else? Steve Ferrone or Ferroni, depending on
how does he say it. I've always said Ferroni.
So his family was Ferrone, right? Okay. But then people just started saying I guess his mom and dad said Ferrone. Then people as a young kid started nicknaming him Ferroni, and so he answers to both. But that's actually not his real last name.
What?
Yeah.
What's his real last name?
Nicholson.
How did you find that out? And why would it be not Ferroni?
Well, spoiler alert, I'm going to have him on my podcast at some point. We talked about it, and I will dive into that. Teaser.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. I think we can agree the PASIC is an amazing event.
Well, they were also, because of last year being all virtual, they were able to have simultaneously live and virtual events. And they were also, just for anyone that was worried about the safety, they required everyone to get the vaccine before being able to get your badge, or every day, if you didn't get the vaccine, every day you had to prove you had a negative COVID test. They made everybody wear masks inside the expo hall, all the seminar rooms. And at that same time in the convention center was the BOA, Bands of America, marching band finals, as well as a cheerleading competition where neither one of those groups were wearing any masks. But it was like they were trying to keep everybody protected and safe. And I think they did a great job. So shout out to everyone at PAS. For sure. Shout out to the logistics team. Shout out to the volunteers. And then a couple more things I saw real quick that were great. There was a marching percussion clinic with Colin McNutt, Tom Rarick, and Paul Rennick. And to see how many people jammed into that room to see them and appreciate the marching arts, that's awesome. John Scales was there with his group, Mason Kitchery, and Elon on bass. Steel Pan, I think, gets underrepresented. I think world instruments are slightly underrepresented. I mean, obviously the fireworks are in the drum set, and there's enough kids doing marching arts that's also big. But I think the world activities need to be represented a little bit better. Yeah, that's my 2 cents. And Rusty Burge, he had a group with Steve Houghton on drums. Yeah, so those are my highlights.
I saw Mason in the hallway before the last concert, and he just started riffing. He hit me with some deep stuff. I was like, man, this might have been the biggest lesson I learned of the whole show. It was like, I will never be able to summarize it, but it was just something like, if you're not playing from the heart, then you're lying to your audience or something like that. I was like, all right, kid. Thanks, dude. I'm going home now.
Right. The last concert of the night, of the weekend, Robert Glasper with Vincente Archer and Damian Reed. That was awesome. And Robert was playing mostly acoustic piano. I know a lot of people know him for playing synths and stuff like that, and they see him with like Chris Daddy Dave or whatever. But to hear him like in some instances, almost like Art Tatum or like Bud Powell, like ripping up and down the keys, but melodically, and then backed by Vincent D'Archer on upright, and then Damian Reed being very inventive with the colors and tones that he's doing, and then even like the subdivisions, like he pulled out some brushes and he would subdivide the big beat into a micro beat and the macro beat, I should say, the macro into the micro, and you know, you weren't even thinking about that. You'd hear something, and you'd be like, all of a sudden, he's like in between it, like, and you're like, oh, I didn't even think to, I didn't even think to hear the music that way. So, yeah, shout out to them.
Yeah, great show overall. Absolutely. All right, let's talk about, we're here to talk about gear, all right? Enough about education. What is this monstrosity that is this your everyday studio rig? What do you got going on?
Yeah, this is my pop percussion setup. So I'll use this if I'm playing with a drum set player. This is what I bring out to like weddings, pop tours, whatever. This is the pop percussion setup for me. And I have right now in front. You want me to go through what I have in front of me?
Yeah, let's quickly run it all down, and I'll ask some questions as we go.
Sure. I have 2 congas in front of me. I do have a 3 conga stand and a third conga behind that curtain over there. But for most of the recording, because I also record from this room, so for most of the recording projects, I just need 2 congas. And the great Marc Quinones told me that if you can't get your point across with 2 congas, 3 is not going to make a difference. So
right.
And sometimes I get really lazy and I don't want to carry a third around. So
that's a lot to carry anyway.
Yeah, it all fits on a rock and roller cart, which has been a lifesaver since 2007. So
yeah, there's a great
the R12.
Yeah,
get the R12 with the big pneumatic wheels, so that because gravel and carpets can be like your nemesis. Stairs are still my kryptonite, but I can roll over most things with the giant R12 wheels. Don't get those small wheels. Yeah.
Hey, tell me about tuning congas before you move on.
I stick around a G and a C. These are a little higher right now because I was doing a project that needed higher drums. But usually G for the tumbadora, C for the quinto, and then if I'm going to put one in between there, I'll pick a melody note that works depending on the music. But usually GC is where I start.
Okay. Do you detune them after every session, or you leave them?
I'm lazy, so I have synthetic heads on here, and I don't detune them.
There we go.
But if they were real, I think they switch between calf and water buffalo. I would have to detune those every time. Otherwise, they'll stretch, just like your skin of your hand. It will stretch the skin, and then it will lose its elasticity and tone. So if you have real skins, detune them. If you have synthetic heads like me, then do what you want.
Dig it. Are you missing anything sonically using the synthetics?
Well, I actually need to change these heads. A lot of people use these fiber skin heads, and that's what's on here right now. And they are more trebly than the real animal skin heads. So they're good for like pop and rock to cut through. Even though through the 80s and 90s when like Marc Quinones and Bobby Allende were playing on like every major session, these heads would cut through the ensemble. But I prefer the warmer, darker tones. So I actually have new drum heads I need to throw on here, and they're all the new skin heads, which are a little more darker for me and closer to those real animal skin heads. So those are the ones that I prefer, but I know a lot of people that prefer these new skins. They prefer these fiber skins over the new skins. And then over on the bongos, currently I have one new skin and one fiber skin. The fiber skin's on the lower drum and the new skin's on the higher drum. That was not personal choice. I actually broke a head on the road, and then I was like, this is all I got. So I threw it on there.
Now, what about tuning those? Those have to be cranked, right?
Yeah. I don't actually know which notes I use. I've heard so much Afro-Cuban music that I sing melodies while I'm playing it. And I'm like, no, that's not it. So like when I start playing some like licks that I've heard over, I'm like, oh, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. I usually lean towards like songs that I've heard Johnny Dandy Rodriguez play on bongos. Because he's like the bongo goat.
What records would he be on that we could check out?
Anything by like Typica 73. He was in Tito Puente's band too. I mean, he's a legend.
Okay. Would you mind just playing some bongos and congas so we can hear them?
Yeah, sure. Let me move this out of the way. How was that?
All right, so before we move away from this, let's talk about the technique of playing these instruments for a drum set player who's going to buy some hand drums. The slap is obviously the hardest one to get, but where should they start? What is the technique? How do you hold your hand?
Right.
Is there a cheater slap that we can get away with?
So the first exercise I would say is just like a basic manateo exercise, and that's realizing that the areas of your hand, because it's the manipulation of your hand that's going to give you the best sound, and that's the most important. Not the flash, not all these little licks and stuff, but like the manipulations of your hand to make sure that the quality of your sound is the best. So of the manateo, it's basically like a palm and then your fingertips. Right, so you get those two sounds. So when you come down when you go to lift up for the palm, you're going to lift from your wrist. It's going to break, and you're going to stay relaxed. And then when you come down, you're going to come down with your entire palm, but you're going to lead with these where the knuckles meet your fingers, right there, and that's going to give you your good bass tone. You want your fingers to be closed. It's not like a hard, like you want the more relaxed you are, the better you're going to get. So you want to come down with your palm like that.
And you're leaving it against the drum.
Correct. And then when I go to get the slap, I'm going to lift up like you're waving goodbye, and then you just kind of like flop it down. But when you come down, you're leading with the outside of your fingertips and the outside of your hand, so you're going to get a little bit of space in here where you were coming down with the bass tone before. That you want to leave a little bit of space there so that you can get this slap sound.
All right, and again, you're leaving your hand, so you're kind of muting it with the flesh of your
with
hand.
the very back of your palm. That's coming down like a millisecond before your fingertips. Now, once you get those, so I would used to do, this is an exercise I learned from Giovanni Hidalgo. It's like out there, common knowledge. If you don't practice this exercise, you should. So it's just quarter notes to eighth notes to 16th notes, 2 measures of each.
Right, so for those of you who are listening and not watching, that was all one hand on one drum. In the 16ths, it looked like a flopping fish.
Correct. And then the next thing, sorry, I've just got it. Okay. All right. So now the next thing is that you do it with the other hand too. So I just did it with my left hand. You would do it with your right hand. And then what you do is then you put them together, one hand in between each other. I will explain it. So it's going to be bass tone of the right, bass tone of the left, fingertips of the right, fingertips of the left. So then you do the same exercise. So that's, if you're listening and not watching, that's palm, palm, tip, tip, right, left, left. And then you move to eighth notes, and then 16th. Right, and then you speed all of that up, usually with a metronome. Now, in most of the music, I would not do bass, bass, tip, tip as far as what I'm playing. I would do bass, tip, tip, bass. So if I was going to play that in the music, I would start literally on the 4th 16th note partial before the beat. So it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4 again. 1, 2, 3. That's what you're going to hear in most of the music. Like a lot of the Cuban rumba, guaguancó, yambu, rumba Colombia, you'll hear that. And then sometimes people will do that like as a fill. I know if you go and see like Changuito, Giovanni, Pedrito Martinez, they'll stick this in, super fast as like a fill.
Mm. Aha.
Yeah.
All right. So that's if you want to actually practice and get good at the congas, what is the rock pop drummer groove that we need to learn on congas to get through the gig?
Gotcha. I'll give you two. Okay. So after you do the manateo, right? That's your heel tip motion.
Yep.
That motion will help you get all the other tones. So like the next thing would be an open tone. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be almost the same motion as when you do the fingertips for the second half of the manateo, the slap-ish kind of sound. Mm-hmm. The open tone, and then you manipulate your hand a little bit and you can get an open slap.
That's right? The mysterious one. I don't know what's going on there.
So
you're hitting the bearing edge of the drum?
So there's a spot where if you put your hand in the middle of the drum and you slide it all the way back towards the rim, there's going to be a spot where the center of your palm, those lifelines, just kind of like fit. They just kind of fit right there. So if you can just find that where it's comfortable, that's where you're going to get your open slap sound from. Now, the slight differences would be when you're getting an open tone, that same knuckle connection where you had your fingertips touching your palm, that you want to kind of get in like slightly inside the rim, because your second knuckle, second digit, I guess, on your fingers, that's going to provide the tone. So you want to get that inside the rim just a little bit, and then if you can keep your wrist flat and your hand, your palm flat, that's going to give you a good dark open tone. But then when you go to the slap, you want to bring that down. You're going to drop your wrist ever so slightly, and your thumb is part of the stroke. So your thumb coming down slightly before your fingers are going to help you with that open slap. And then to make it a closed slap, you just mute the drum with your other hand. Right.
So that's almost like a harmonic on a guitar. You're kind of like making the drum have an overtone rather than a fundamental.
Correct. So now if you have your palm sound and your open tone and your open slap and your closed slap, you can get away with so many rhythms. So one of them would be the basic, what we call a tumbao or a marcha. And that's just, I can explain it as I'm playing it. So I'm left-handed, so I'm doing most of the manateo stuff with my right hand. So that's going to be right, right, left, right, 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 left, left, right, right, left, right, 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 left, left. And the tones I'm getting are heel, tip, slap, tip, heel, tip, open, open, heel, tip, slap, tip, heel, tip, open, open. Now, when you start a song, you start with an open tone, and then every time after that, it's just a manateo. So if I was going to start a song, I'd go. And that will get you through so much stuff. You can like Build Me Up Buttercup. It's a tumbao, but it's kind of swung. Right? Steely Dan's Do It Again. That's also tumbao, just happens to have a double on one hand.
Cool.
Right? And then there's the soul tumbao, which is basically open tones to close slaps. You might hear that in like some like Marvin Gaye or Donny Hathaway.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so those two grooves will get you through so much music.
All right, let's shift over to the little guys.
The bongos. So there's a pattern
on there.
Yeah, so I'm going to move this microphone so I can get closer. That's a little bit different because congas are more of your hands, bongos are more of your fingertips. Okay, so you start with just cutting the head in half with one hand from your thumb all the way back to your wrist. All right, so now we have cut the head in half and it's muted. So the hand that you're going to move, now it's weird. I play congas left-handed, but I play bongos right-handed. I don't know why. I think when I started playing, I was mirroring somebody on the congas, and then when I actually got over to learn the bongos, like there was somebody sitting next to me to show me, you know.
Okay.
Anyway, I suggest you. I went and then it's funny when I went to take lessons with Giovanni, he's left-handed too. So he set them up left-handed, and I sat across from him, so they were right-handed for me. And I told him, I was like, "Oh, these are backwards." He's like, "Good." He's like, "Can you turn left?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Can you turn to the right?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Perfect. You should be able to play either way on the drums. It should be music, not patterns." And I was like, "Gotcha."
Yeah, sure, man.
Oh, don't let me forget to tell you about how I perfected my slap. That's a good story. Let me get to the bongos, and then we'll go back to the slap. So the head's cut off in half and it's muted. And with your fingertips on your right hand, if you're playing right-handed, you're going to just use the upper 2 digits part of your fingers. Sometimes I use 2 fingers, sometimes 3. It honestly depends on how fast the music is and how big of a sound I need. But I'm basically just going to play 8th notes. So I'm going to do 3 on the top and on the macho drum, which is the small one, and 1 on the embra, which is the larger drum. So it's right. So that's what that hand's doing. The other hand is going to switch from having your thumb cut the head in half all the way down to your fingertips to the outside of the drum. Now that's muting the drum. But because it's muting less of the drum, it's going to be a different tone. So I'm going to switch that in between every one of these 8th note hits on my right hand. So can you hear that there's 2 different sounds here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what you're doing. But that's the good pattern that you should learn. It's called the martillo. It's the standard pattern. But a lot of times they can vary away from that because they're so high tuned, and there's the timbales keeping time and the congas are keeping time, so that they can kind of phrase in and around what the singing is doing. So you might hear like you know, kind of like if you were playing a pattern on the drum set, right, and you got your snare on 2 and 4, you might fill in with some of those ghost notes. Like very Dave Garibaldi-ish, if you will.
Is it like the bongos, the kind of the one instrument that gets improvised more than any of the percussion section? Is that kind of the rule?
It can in a salsa situation, but then when you get to the chorus, they put down the bongos and they pick up the bongo bell, and they start keeping time. Right, and that's when the timbales get off the shell of the drum, right, and they go to the up to the you fill, cue everybody, and then they'll go to like the timbale bell, the mambo bell, and that's when now the bongos aren't in the way, so the timbale player has more room to play more fills to cue the band, and the conga player can be more melodic. So instead of like playing on just one drum, they'll all of a sudden maybe start to do more melodic phrases. You know, because the bongos aren't in their way anymore. So,
dope. All right, yeah. Timbales, I think.
Oh, before we go away, the slap.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you're keeping me on point.
So, fun fact, I was at UMass Amherst and for college, and one of our friends in our friend group, probably in the drum line, was turning 21. And like, all right, we're all taking him out. We're going to the strip club. And I think the strip club is one of the most useless places because you might as well just set your money on fire. It's like you're not getting anything in return. Unless they have a good buffet. I mean, that's the...
Ew.
I mean, anyway, I'm not. Atlanta might, whatever.
Ew, keep going.
Well, you went to school in West Virginia, so I don't know what you were dealing with. But
I don't even want. That's a nope, won't go there. They were coolers. It was a BYOB. That's all I can say.
Now that this podcast is completely derailed. So we took him out of the strip club, and we're sitting there, and we're all putting money in front of him, like, and we're stepping back. So the girls have to come in. They have to dance for him. It's his birthday. Happy birthday. And all of a sudden, on the other side of the room, I just hear, pow, pow, pow. And I'm like, I look over, and it's this girl, and she's smacking her butt cheek, like, as hard as she, well, it looks like as hard as she can, but it's just like, you can hear it over like the DJ. It's just through the whole room. And I was like mesmerized. I was like, oh my God. So I went up to her and I was like, does that hurt? She goes, oh, no. She's like, these, if you don't hear it, and she hit her butt and it was like thud. She's like, those hurt. But these, they don't hurt. She's like, you have to be super relaxed, and you have to let, the fingertips like rebound off of it. It's like, and all of a sudden it just clicked for me. Like, that's how you get a good conga slap.
Oh,
you have to be relaxed. You can't hold on. Because at times I was like, my hand was hurting. And I was like, oh, because I'm too tense. I'm hitting too hard. I'm holding on. The more relaxed I am, the bigger sounds I was getting out of the congas. And I was like, I don't remember what this girl's name is, but I hope she made a lot of tips that night. And I'd like to thank her for...
I'm so glad we went back to that story. Thank you.
So, and then, well, I don't know. I know you're into gear, so I was going to just tell you the microphones that I've got up here on too.
Oh yeah, what do you got going on?
So on these conga drums, I have a Sennheiser 421 direct mic over each drum, and then in between the two drums, I have this ribbon mic. It's an AEA R92, which is similar to the R84, but it's rewired inside so it can be used as a close mic. So what I do is I pan the quinto and the tuba a little bit to the left and the right, and I keep the R92 ribbon right in the middle, and that is the conga sound that I'll send off to people as a stereo mix.
I thought that was a lamp. That mic looks like a lamp. Yeah.
looks like the Beats pill.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
But that's what I get. And then on the bongos, I've got in the studio, I've got an SM57 up close, and then a Sennheiser large diaphragm condenser over the top of it, the MK4. That, and I mix those two together, and that'll be my bongo sound. But this MK4 is also my overhead, so I can also use it for like shakers, the tambourine and stuff if I need to just do a single track like that. Timbales, on top of the timbales, I got the Sennheiser E914 pencil condenser, and then underneath it I have the RE320 by EV. The RE20 is a little warmer and darker, and I wanted the 320 because it's a little brighter, and I wanted these timbales to be able to cut through the mix. So
just one mic for both drums?
Yeah, it's a big enough diaphragm that I haven't had any issues hearing both of the drums. So anyway, so yeah, the timbales, there's everybody knows or should know the clave pattern, right? There's many different ones. There's the Afro Bembe one, right, which you typically would hear on a bell. Right, and then there's the son clave, which lands on the beat. And then you have the rumba clave, which the third note is displaced by an eighth note. The Brazilian clave. Now, everything I just played was in the direction of 3-2, so that would mean that the 3-note side would come first, which is the more syncopated side, and then the 2-note side would come second, which is the more release of the tension side, if that makes sense. Then you have different cascada patterns, which are usually played on the shell. There's one that was from Havana. Then there's the other one from Matanzas. Right.
Where's the downbeat? Do that one again.
Sure. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Did you get that?
Yep. I didn't know those patterns were from different places.
Yeah, it's like East Coast, West Coast, like Biggie, Tupac.
Uh-huh.
So when
would you ever mix them? Would you get kicked off a gig?
Well, I mean, typically each one lends to different patterns. You know what I mean? Like when you do, like if I'm just doing the rumba clave here, and I do the wan wan ko, if I go like this, that is the Havana style because it's got 2 tones on the high drum. But if I go with only 1 tone open on the top, that's the Matanza style. So if I were playing the Cascara, right? Or if I play the other one. Oh, sorry, my bad. Make sense?
Yeah, that, man. No idea. I just learned something huge for me right there. Thank you.
Ah, you're welcome.
Worth the price of admission. Everyone, see you next week.
All right, thank you. Good night. So then, yeah, that's basically you learn the different claves, you learn the different palito patterns are what's played on the shell. And then you have your mambo bell pattern, which also sometimes gets played on a cymbal when they get to like the monia, the shout chorus section. But it's basically, I'll play it 2-3 because it's more hip. You usually hear it that way. 1. So if I play the clave with it. Right? So that one, the reason I play it mostly 2-3 is a lot of times in the Latin music, there will be an odd measure break. So a break that is 3 bars or 5 bars. So a song might start 3-2 in the direction 3-2, and then they'll have a break like drum fill, and it'll be like 3 bars or 5 bars. And then when it comes out of the break, it's 2-3. And that's a little bit more hip to dance to. So that's kind of something that you should be aware of.
Is that bell pattern ever rumba style? If you're playing a mambo course, is it ever rumba clave?
Well, a lot of that dance music, like songo, timba. Well, how do I explain this without getting in trouble by the clave police? A lot of the salsa music that you hear, is generally son clave. But when you get into timba and songo, they started to use rumba clave just because it was more syncopated and more fun. So like the son clave, it has like a pause, right? So if I'm tapping on the rim here, quarter notes, and I play the clave, that's just a pause there. Pause. Makes sense? But if I'm playing the rumba clave, it just keeps rolling forward, you know? It's just, there's no pause. So the music just keeps moving. There's more energy to it. So that's why the newer styles, people typically play a rumba style clave instead of son.
Excellent. Now, are the drums tuned to specific intervals, pitches? Or is it...
Yeah, same idea, like kind of like a 4th or 5th, depending on who you are, what you like. Right? And the playing zones, people should know the playing zones are either the center on the low drum, the center on the high drum, and then the rim shot, which is like, if you're in drum corps, it's not a gok shot. It's not back in the middle of the stick. It's a ping shot. So the rim shot's coming in like that first couple inches of the stick. Right? That's kind of what you're getting. And now I have this other bell over here because sometimes the timbale player has to do like 2 bells. Right? So, and then there's the cha-cha bell, which is the small one. But for most of my purposes, as what I do in pop percussion is somebody will ask me to, this is how it started. Somebody will ask me to record, and I'll go and overdub each thing. You know, congas, shakers, tambourines, cowbells, whatever. And then they'll be like, hey, can you come and play this show with us? And can you cover all the parts that you recorded?
Of course.
So I had to like build my independence. So, you know, that I might have like one hand on the the bells, another hand on the conga. Right. And then as I got better at my independence, shout out to Horacio El Negro Hernandez for all of his help and inspiration in that. I added these, you probably can't see them, but there's 2 foot pedals in front of me. One of them is connected to the Jam tambourine, and the other one is connected to the ES2 cha-cha bell. So I might, let's say if I'm playing my secret weapon, which is this jingle stick here, right? And they want that to continue. I have a mounted tambourine attached to the stand that the bongos are on.
Yep.
So with one hand, I'll play the jingle stick striking the tambourine. Right? And then another hand, I might play the conga tumbao. And then if I really need to drive it, I'll have my foot on this cha-cha bell. Right?
I gotta get one of those jingle sticks. That is cool.
Yeah, and you can play it on a cymbal too, or sometimes I'll go from like a cowbell to like this this SPD pad over here where I have all these sounds and to get like claps and snaps and stuff like that. But since I don't have the SPD plugged in right now, I can just go up to this trap stack. Right, but now I'm still missing the strike of my tambourine. So that's why I have my foot pedal down here. I can do that. I can be like, does that make sense?
Yeah, that's epic.
So, yeah. And then depending on what's going on, like I've worked out independence that I can switch feet while I'm doing stuff or whatever. Yeah, this jingle stick has helped save me a lot. As well as like this thumb thing, which we talked about. It's a shaker that slides under your finger. If I have like a stick and I want the shaker in between, like let's say I'm striking this cowbell, that's something else. This mic stand's kind of in the way for me to get accurate 16ths, but. Kind of how I would use that.
Has that thumb thing replaced holding the shaker in your hand?
It does if I need to eliminate holding a shaker. Do you know what I mean? Like I have shakers over here, right? So like I can play shaker and I can play the conga, and if I just need a little bit of drive, I can put my foot on this cowbell. Right? Which actually is kind of cool. So depending on what the song needs, I let the song dictate. I might do like the shaker with one hand, the conga with the other. And that's where I would switch feet from bell to tambourine if I just want the strike. You know what I mean? I just have these options, so depending on what I need to do, I can get through that.
Interesting that you switch which hand you're using the shaker for, depending
on...
on...
I mean, it's just... I'm stronger on my left hand with the shaker, but I'm stronger on the congas with my left hand also. So going back to like what Giovanni said, you should be able to do both hands, both hands, whatever. So if I have... the congas on my left, I'll just play them on my left, and I'll put the shaker in my right hand. But if I'm playing some like bell stuff, then I'll put the shaker in my left hand, and I'll play the bell stuff in my right because the timbales are on my right. I try to think about things melodically and ambidextrously instead of I learned this pattern, I have to play it this way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to come back to shakers, but what's the role of timbales in like a non-Latin context? Are you using it primarily for fills, cowbells? I mean, what?
Mostly it's going to be like the bell stuff. But there's certain places where you can do like a shot, and that kind of helps. Like, was it give it to me? Rick James, give it to me, baby. There's no timbales in there, but like there's certain parts where like this cowbell will drive things, and then like switching sections, just doing a little 5-stroke. That kind of helps cue some songs, So like even though there may not be timbales in the song, it can be used tastefully. If just kind of in the same way that it would be in a Latin band, like cueing the rest of the band.
All right, that segues right into playing with a live drummer. How do you not step all over each other for fills and patterns and who's going to play the subdivisions?
Right. Well, the first thing is somebody always has to be playing time. So I lend to, if I'm in a pop situation, I lend to just playing time first. Like if I'm in a Latin band, the timbales and congas, they kind of are driving the bus a little bit more, and the drum set player will be experienced enough to know this style of music is more in those Afro-Cuban instruments, so he knows that he's kind of guiding, but he's not really driving the bus. Does that make sense?
Okay, that's interesting.
So, you have like pop Latin crossovers like Mark Anthony, Ricky Martin, Enrique Iglesias, where there is a drum set player because they also do crossover, and those drummers that are in those bands can also understand and sometimes play percussion as well. So they know how the relationship works, and they can work well with a percussionist. But if you're a drum set player that primarily plays in pop, rock, funk, and you may not always have a percussionist, the percussionist should know that the drummer's driving the bus. And hopefully the percussionist will have played some drum set, so you kind of know where the drum set player is going to fill, like at the end of the measure, beats 3 and 4, right? So if I'm going to do a fill, I might set up his fill or her fill, or come out of their fill over the bar line just a little bit. Do you know what I mean? It's like I might let them go like I might come at the end. Or I might do something like leading into it. Like I've played enough drum set to know typically where a drum set player plays. But my first inclination as a percussionist coming into a scenario with a drum set player, especially if I haven't played with them, is I wait and I listen. I just play time and I listen for where they tend to have their holes. It's like a conversation. Like right now, you're listening to me talk, and when you hear me take a breath, you go, okay.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So I'm listening to phrase endings and how they are and what they're doing, and I'm also listening to how they play their grooves. Do they play a lot of ghost notes, or do they leave open space? Well, if they don't play a lot of ghost notes, I'm going to pick up a shaker or a tambourine to fill that in. If they do play a lot of ghost notes, I might just stick with tambourine strikes and play more congas. So, like I have enough options and colors to make their grooves sound different, even if they play the same groove on every song. I have different ways that I can make it sound cool. And that also comes from me playing different styles of music, like Afro-Cuban, orchestral, marching, pit orchestras for plays, like in musicals. I have enough genres that I can be like, okay, I'm gonna pull this fader up. I'm gonna pull the orchestral fader up. I'm gonna, if I was playing like some Adele stuff, I might do like some orchestral type stuff. If I was gonna play some Tower of Power, I'd be like, okay, well, this is funky. What did Johnny Griggs do with James Brown? That kind of stuff.
On the flip side, are there things that you just wish drummers would stop doing when there's a percussionist on a gig? Yeah,
you don't have to play so much. Like there's two sets of hands, so 4 hands, 2 feet at least for for the drum set player, and if you're lucky and you have me, at least a 3rd foot. Like there's a lot of limbs, so we don't have to work so hard. We can kind of team up, and if they listen also, so then they can be like, oh, I hear what you're doing over there. That's kind of cool. I don't have to fill every hole. There's another guy here or girl, and they can fill that space. So yeah, you don't have to play so much. Because when you're playing Afro-Cuban, say that again.
It should be word to the wise for every situation. You don't
Well,
have
I
to play
mean,
so much.
if you study like African and Afro-Cuban and Latin American music, there's typically more than one percussion source, right? So those people are actually used to playing with other people and finding the holes. It's when you get to like North American rock, pop, funk where they're typically the only percussion source. So they're used to like having to fill it up, especially if it's in a smaller band, like a power trio. There's no other person to get in the way. So they can really fill that up, you know? Yeah.
Let's wrap it up by talking about like there is not a drum set player, and you're the hybrid. You have to cover the role of a drum set player, but you don't play drum set. What's your rig, and then how does those instruments function for you can be playing grooves and textures all at once?
So are you talking more of my singer-songwriter setup?
Yeah, like the type of rig you would pack into a van and do a tour with Charlie Hunter or something like that. Like what would
Okay.
that be?
Well, so yeah, Charlie. Well, first of all, Charlie's a freak. Like nobody plays like Charlie because he's covering all the bass and guitar parts at the same time. So with that setup that I used with him, I was subbing for Keita Agawa, who is also a percussionist that can also play drum set. So when I went to I went to check out the show before I joined the tour, just to kind of be like, what is he working with? And I know that Charlie, his first instrument is drums. So he loves playing with all kinds of drummers, and he loves playing really rhythmic music. So over the years, he's played in all different scenarios with all of the best drummers. So I was like, all right, you know what? I'm not going to be those guys. I'm not going to be able to replicate what he's done in the past with like Mike Clark and Questlove and, all the greats, like, I'm like, what can I bring to it? Well, I'm a percussionist. So, I can cover, the kick snare sounds, but I can also add these other colors that he might not be used to hearing. So when I saw Keita show up with like a frame drum based drum set, like the frame drums were turned flat, so that they could be hit like drums. And he had all these different sounds and colors. He had, I think, like a brush attached to one of his panderos, so it sounded like a snare drum. It's just, I think he had like was it the kabash, the African big gourd as his bass drum. He's like, I was like, okay, no holds barred. Like I can do whatever I want. And I had been playing with a lot of singer-songwriters, so my hybrid kit started around a cajon, and then from the cajon, I added shakers and tambourines with one hand. So I'm playing the cajon with one hand and playing shakers and tambourines with the other. And then I could add these foot pedals. So I had like the cowbell on one pedal, tambourine on another. I had a low boy hi-hat that I added. I then added a bass drum pedal that would strike the cajon so I could free up my hands to do other stuff. I added a ride. I got this pancake snare from A&F, which fit in my cymbal bag. That was the main impetus for getting that one. So like I was like, okay, if I need to be really drummy, I can go to the ride, the snare, and the kick pedal, and the low boy. If I need to be a little more intimate, I can play the cajon, tambourine. I could put a shaker in one hand, or even I had a conga on my left, so I could do that. And then I added the Stanton Moore Pandero, tuned it down really low, and I put a bass drum mic underneath it, so it sounded like a big surdo. And Charlie actually plays the Pandero really well. So there was a song that we did on the road where I played all percussion, he played Pandero, and the third person was a vocalist. So it was just drums and voice, which is kind of cool.
Very cool.
So yeah, I look at it as like, what needs to be covered for this song? I have now a lot more options than just kick, snare, hat. So some of the funky stuff, when he would get really busy, I would put down a shaker, put down the jingle stick, because that's going to get in the way of his like strumming. So I would then open it up and be like kick, snare kind of voice on the cajon, and conga drum on my left, and then maybe add some length to it with a tambourine pedal, or if I needed to drive it, I had the cowbell pedal. But that was kind of my impetus there. Again, I let the music dictate what choices I make, but I'm just fortunate that I have all these choices from working on my independence and learning these styles. I really think of it as like if I was a producer sitting behind a big Neve console, Like which faders am I going to pull up and pull down, and how loud am I going to pull them up, and what's the sound? Is it going to be a trebly sound, or is it going to be a dark sound? And then listening to like great mixers like Manny Marroquin. If you go to his discography and see all the types of music he's mixed, it's all these different genres and styles, but typically he keeps you interested in the way that he mixes a song. And it's like pretty much every 10 seconds there will be a new sound introduced, you know. So that's kind of how I think. I'm like, all right, let me just start with some time. And then after time, I can then think about the colors and other groove choices that I might have.
That's great. All right, so last question. This is just a show all about gear. What would be the drummer percussionist starter pack? So I'm a drummer, and my band is going to do some acoustic shows or something, and I need something that I can quickly, you know, just cover the gig. What would be your drummer turned percussionist starter pack?
So they're typically a drum set player, and now they're just playing a gig.
Those same songs, those pop or rock or funk songs, but it has to be super quiet for an acoustic gig.
Oh, okay. I would grab a cajon.
Okay.
And I'd learn how to play it like correctly. I know I've seen a lot of drummers, they get the cajon and they're like, oh, I just hit it. But it takes some technique. Like the same way I have the advantage of coming to the cajon from playing hand drums, so I know how to manipulate my hands on the cajon. But there's some folkloric styles you should really check out because you can get these sounds and colors out of the cajon that you wouldn't even think you would. And that would be like Peru. There's like Festejo, Lando, Zamacueca. These are the cajon is the national instrument of Peru. So definitely go and check out those rhythms. And then in the 70s, Paco de Lucia, the flamenco guitar player, he came to Peru and found the cajon. And one of the best cajon players gave him a cajon as a gift, and he brought it back to Spain because he had been searching for other sounds. He had tried bongos and congas, and they weren't fitting the flamenco music the way he wanted. So when he found the cajon, that's when he brought it back. And of course, there were some purists that were like, no, you can't put that in there. And other people are like, wow, that's really inventive. But now, years later, the cajon is a primary instrument in the flamenco setting. And the techniques and stuff that they can get out of the cajon with like some snaps and the way that they can manipulate their fingers and palms on the cajon, they get all these other colors. Like check out Diego Alvarez, or El Piranha, or Jose. I'm spacing on his last name. Jose.
Look to me for help. I don't know.
I think it's Montaigne. But yeah, like just check out some flamenco cajon, and there's enough information in there to be able to fill out a groove rather than just going boom bap boom bap. You can I started with just adding paradiddles with accents and taps, and then the next thing I would say is add a shaker, because then you can get some wash. There's all kinds of different tambourine options, whether it's like foot tambourines that slide over your shoe, or you can actually get a pedal. That'll give some length to like your strikes if you're striking a tambourine as well. We already talked about the jingle stick. That would be the first things I would grab: cajon, shaker, tambourine. Start there, and then if you really need to get into it, you can add a cowbell or a cymbal.
There we go. That's your shopping list. Merry Christmas, everyone.
And now, if you check out somebody like Brian Potts, he just plays Pandero, and he's got the Pandero's tuned high, as if it was some of the Brazilian folkloric grooves, right? But he also has a Pandero that's tuned really low, and he sticks a mic on it, and he can get it to sound like a full drum set with just this one thing, like and it's got the what are the chancletas, the tambourine jingles that are in there, platelas. I'm spacing. I think chancleta is the sandal that the Hispanic grandmothers would throw at you to discipline you. I'm blanking. Brian, forgive me. But the Pandero jingles are different than tambourine jingles. So when you play the Pandero tuned low, like a funk drum, and you hear those jingles, it kind of gives a little bit more, almost like if there was a shaker involved, So there you go. Pandero, cajon, shaker, tambourine, and then you can add on cowbell and cymbal.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, Damon. I've got a lot of work to do here. Get my house back up.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. I enjoyed seeing you at PASIC, and let me know anytime you want more information. I got you.
Where can people learn more about what you're doing?
My website is just damongrant.org. .com was way too expensive, so I will stick with .org for a little while longer. Instagram, actually, all my social media handles are my name, Damon M. Grant. So you can just find me there. I post a lot of stuff. I'm recording for people from home if you need that. And I'm also available to go on tour. Yay!
There we go. All right, I'll get you back on when I got some other stuff to talk about later, so we'll get you back on when that comes out.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I have some work to do today on that, which you're referring to.
That's it for this week's episode. If you like the show, please head over to iTunes, wherever you get your podcast, and give us a 5-star rating and drop us a nice review. That helps spread the word and gets this podcast into the ears of more drummers around the world. For now, have a good week, and we will see you next time.